scattered sunshine and dispelled darkness. His life was an example of all that was good. How do people see you? How do they see us as Christians? Do people see us as creatures of light or creatures of darkness? How do we present ourselves to the world around us? And I think that's an important question. There's always been this statement that I've heard so many Christians say, well, I just don't care what people think of me. I just am who I am. Well, brethren, I think that's the wrong attitude. I'll be honest with you, that's not a scriptural way of thinking about things. We should care about what people think, to a degree. We certainly shouldn't carry it too far, but we should consider what people think of us. It's really important that people see us in this lesson. They ought to see us as Christ is seen, as the light. Certainly Christ is the light of the world, a little different than you and I, but let's see what Peter says. 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 22. Peter writes, who did And so,